Welcome back to Tales from the Jade Scroll. Today's story is Why Dragons Bring the Rain. 4 dragons once broke the laws of heaven. That's a dangerous thing to do. It was, but the dragons believed they had a good reason. What kind of reason? Far below the clouds, an entire world was suffering. What happened? The rain had disappeared. Day after day, the sun blazed across the sky. Not a single cloud appeared. How long did it last? Long enough for rivers to shrink, wells to grow shallow, and cracks to spread across the fields. That sounds terrible. For many villages, it was becoming a disaster. Every morning, people searched the sky for signs of rain. Every evening, they returned home disappointed. Imagine waiting for something so important and seeing nothing change. That's exactly what people faced. Farmers watched their crops dry out, families worried about food, children carried buckets farther and farther to find water. Couldn't anyone help? High above the earth, 4 great dragons were watching everything. The dragons knew what was happening? They did. The long dragon, the yellow dragon, the black dragon, and the pearl dragon could see the suffering below. So why didn't they just make it rain? Because the power to send rain belonged to heaven. And heaven hadn't sent any? Which left the dragons facing a difficult choice. What choice? Obey the rules or help the people themselves.
If the dragons could see what was happening, I still don't understand why they didn't help.
It wasn't that simple.
Why not?
The 4 dragons flew high above the clouds, watching the world below. Everywhere they looked, they saw signs of the drought.
It wasn't just one village.
Not even close. Rivers were shrinking across the land. Lakes were growing smaller. Fields that should have been green had turned brown and dry.
The dragons must have known people were in trouble.
They did. One day, the long dragon looked down and saw a group of farmers standing in a dry field.
What were they doing?
Looking at the sky.
Waiting for rain?
Waiting and hoping. Nearby, children carried buckets toward a river that seemed smaller than it had been only a month before. In another village, families gathered around a well that was slowly running out of water.
That's hard to watch.
The dragons felt the same way.
Did they talk about it?
They did. The 4 dragons gathered among the clouds and looked down at the world together.
Let me guess. They all had different opinions.
You know how group discussions work.
Nobody agrees on anything.
Not at first. The long dragon spoke first.
What did he say?
He said, "The people below need rain. If nothing changes, many will suffer."
It's difficult to argue with.
The other dragons nodded. They could all see the same problem.
So what was stopping them?
Helping was easy. The question was whether heaven would allow it.
If heaven might not allow it, then the dragons had a real problem.
They did. The 4 dragons continued flying above the clouds, watching the drought spread across the land.
Did they all agree on what to do?
Have you ever tried getting 4 people to agree on something important?
Fair point.
The long dragon believed they should think carefully before acting. The yellow dragon agreed. They both knew that heaven's laws existed for a reason.
So they wanted to be cautious?
Exactly. But the black dragon wasn't so patient. Every day he watched the rivers shrink and the fields grow drier.
Let me guess. He wanted to do something immediately.
You know him already.
People are suffering now, he argued. What good are rules if they prevent us from helping?
That's actually a good question.
The pearl dragon understood both sides. She worried about breaking heaven's laws, but she also worried about the families below.
Especially if nobody else was helping.
That's what troubled her most. As they spoke, the dragons passed over another village. The fields were dry. The wells were nearly empty. Villagers gathered together, trying to decide how much water they could spare.
The dragons kept seeing the same thing everywhere.
Everywhere. The long dragon finally spoke. "Arguing won't bring rain," he said. "Before we do anything else, we should ask heaven for help."
Ask who?
The Jade Emperor, ruler of heaven.
So they could just go talk to him?
Just might be oversimplifying things.
Fair enough.
The Jade Emperor ruled a magnificent heavenly palace far above the clouds. Powerful spirits, gods, and magical creatures traveled there to seek his wisdom. So getting an audience with him was a pretty big deal. A very big deal. The four dragons looked down one last time at the dry world below. Had they made their decision? They had. The next morning, the four dragons would begin a journey to heaven itself.
So the dragons decided to visit the Jade Emperor?
They did. If anyone could solve the drought, it was the ruler of heaven.
Assuming he was willing to help.
That was exactly the question. Early the next morning, the four dragons rose above the clouds and began their journey. Higher and higher they climbed until the earth below looked like a painted map.
I've always thought that would be amazing to see.
Rivers looked like silver ribbons. Mountains looked small enough to fit in the palm of your hand.
Suddenly I'm not worried about climbing a hill anymore.
Everything looked smaller from that high up. As they traveled, they passed through layers of shining clouds. Golden birds flew through the sky, and distant palaces sparkled in the sunlight.
Were those the palaces of heaven?
Some of them. Heaven was said to be filled with magnificent halls, gardens, and courts where gods and spirits carried out their duties.
This doesn't sound like the kind of place where you can just walk in and demand a meeting.
Definitely not. The closer they came to the Jade Emperor's palace, the grander everything became. Towers rose above the clouds, gates gleamed like polished gold, great banners drifted in the wind.
That's a lot more impressive than my school principal's office.
By quite a bit. But as the dragons approached the palace gates, they began to feel nervous.
Even the black dragon?
Especially the black dragon.
Now I know this is serious.
Asking the Jade Emperor for help was one thing. Convincing him was another.
And if he said no?
That was a possibility none of the dragons wanted to think about. The four dragons landed before the great gates of heaven and looked up.
Were they finally going to meet the Jade Emperor?
First, they had to get past the guards.
So the dragons had finally reached the gates of heaven?
They had. Towering above them were golden gates so tall that even the dragons had to look up to see the top.
That's saying something.
Dragons aren't exactly short. Great clouds drifted around the palace walls. Sunlight reflected from golden rooftops, making them shine like stars.
The place sounds impossible.
That's exactly how many stories describe it. But the dragons weren't there to admire the scenery. They had a drought to solve. And time was running out. Standing before the gates were heavenly guards dressed in shining armor. Each carried a long spear and watched carefully over the entrance.
Did they recognize the dragons?
Of course. The four dragons were well known throughout heaven.
That's gotta make introductions easier.
A little. The long dragon stepped forward and explained why they had come. He spoke of the drought, the empty rivers, and the suffering spreading across the land.
Did the guards let them in?
Not immediately.
Really?
Even important visitors had to wait their turn.
Heaven has paperwork too?
Apparently so. As they waited outside the gates, the dragons grew restless.
Let me guess. Black Dragon hated waiting.
You know him very well by now. Every moment matters, he said. The people below need rain now. Hard to argue with that. Pearl Dragon looked down through a gap in the clouds toward the earth far below.
Could you still see the villages?
Not clearly, but she could remember them. The dry fields, the shrinking rivers, the worried faces. That would make waiting even harder. It did. At last, the great gates began to open. Finally! The dragons had been summoned.
To see the Jade Emperor?
To see whether heaven would answer their request.
So the dragons were finally allowed inside?
They were. The great gates opened slowly, and the four dragons entered the palace of the Jade Emperor.
Was it as impressive inside as it was outside?
Even more so. Vast halls stretched into the distance. Golden pillars rose toward ceilings hidden among shining clouds. Courtiers, spirits, and heavenly officials moved quietly through the palace.
That sounds enormous.
It was designed to remind visitors that they stood at the center of heaven itself. At the far end of the hall sat the Jade Emperor upon a magnificent throne.
Were the dragons nervous?
After all that confidence, they suddenly found themselves choosing their words very carefully.
Especially Black Dragon?
Especially Black Dragon. The four dragons bowed respectfully before the ruler of heaven.
Who spoke first?
The long dragon. Your Majesty, he began, the people below are suffering. The rivers are shrinking, the crops are failing, and the land desperately needs rain.
Straight to the point.
There wasn't much time to waste.
The Jade Emperor listened patiently as the dragons described the drought. They spoke of dry fields, empty wells, and families hoping each day for clouds that never came.
And what did he say?
For a moment, the great hall was silent.
That's never a good sign.
Not usually. Then the Jade Emperor replied.
What was his answer?
He told the dragons not to worry. Rain would come soon.
Really?
Really.
Then the story's over, right?
Not quite. The dragons thanked the Jade Emperor and left the palace, feeling hopeful.
But something tells me there was a problem.
There was. Days would pass, then more days, and the rain still wouldn't come. But before we find out whether the rain ever comes, we'll take a quick break.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a bit.
Come to an end.
But every day they looked down.
And every day they saw the same dry land. Rivers became smaller. Lakes pulled farther from their shores. The earth cracked beneath the hot sun.
The people must have been wondering if the rain would ever come.
They were. Each morning, hopeful eyes searched the sky. Each evening, families returned home carrying only as much water as they could find.
Hope can only last so long.
As the days passed, the 4 dragons flew across the land again and again. They visited quiet valleys, wide rivers, and busy villages.
Was anywhere doing better?
Nowhere. The Long Dragon watched farmers trying to save the last of their crops. Pearl Dragon saw children carrying heavy buckets from wells that were almost empty.
Every place had the same problem.
Every place. Yellow Dragon wanted to believe the Jade Emperor had simply been delayed. But with each passing day, even he began to wonder how much longer the people could wait.
That must have been difficult for him.
It was. He respected heaven's laws, but he also cared deeply about the people below.
And Black Dragon?
He had reached the end of his patience. Promises don't fill rivers, he said. Promises don't grow crops.
He's not wrong.
For a long moment, none of the dragons spoke. They simply watched the world below.
What were they thinking?
That every hour they waited was another hour without rain.
So they were running out of choices.
Exactly. Before the sun set that day, the 4 dragons gathered above the sea to make the most important decision of their lives.
The 4 dragons had made up their minds. They had. It wasn't the decision any of them wanted to make, but they believed it was the right one. Was anyone still unsure? Yellow Dragon took one last look toward heaven. If the Jade Emperor is about to send rain, he said, we'll be disobeying him for no reason. That's a fair concern. Long Dragon nodded. Then we'll wait one final time. Just one last chance? Just one. The dragons watched the sky from sunrise until sunset, looking for even a single storm cloud. But the blue sky never changed. The wind remained warm. Not one drop of rain fell. That was their answer. It was. Long Dragon slowly turned toward the sea. So this was really happening. We know the consequences, he told the others. If heaven chooses to punish us, we'll accept it together. Nobody tried to change his mind? Not one of them. Pearl Dragon was the first to leap into the air. Black Dragon followed with a powerful sweep of his tail. Yellow Dragon smiled quietly to himself before joining them. At last, Long Dragon soared into the sky, leading his friends toward the sea. All 4 of them. They flew across the sparkling water until they reached the deepest part of the ocean. What happened then? The dragons circled lower and lower, drawing in enormous mouthfuls of seawater. They were going to carry the rain themselves. With every beat of their wings, they climbed higher into the sky. The sea shimmered beneath them as they raced toward the dry land. They knew there was no turning back now. No turning back. The thirsty villages came into view once again. The dragons spread across the sky, each carrying precious water. Were they finally going to make it rain? In just a few moments, the skies above China would change forever.
The 4 dragons were carrying water from the sea.
Higher and higher they flew until they reached the dry land once again. Below them, the rivers were little more than winding streams, and the fields had almost turned to dust.
The people had no idea the dragons were above them.
They didn't. They simply went about another day, hoping for a miracle.
So how did the dragons make it rain?
Long Dragon gave a single nod.
That was the signal.
It was. Together, the 4 dragons swept across the sky. As they flew, they sprayed great streams of seawater into the air. The wind caught the water, scattering it into countless tiny droplets. Like millions of little raindrops. Exactly. At first, only a few drops fell, then more. Soon the dry earth heard something it hadn't heard in a very long time.
Rain.
Gentle rain began falling across the land. The cracked ground drank it in. Empty streams began to flow once more.
I bet the people couldn't believe it.
Children ran outside, laughing as the rain splashed around them. Farmers lifted their faces toward the sky. Families placed buckets beneath the falling water, grateful for every drop. After waiting so long, that must have felt incredible. It did. The 4 dragons circled high above the clouds, smiling as they watched the river slowly come back to life. They knew they'd made the right choice. They did, even if it meant facing whatever punishment heaven might choose. Did the Jade Emperor know what had happened yet? Not at first. But high above the clouds, one of heaven's officials looked down and noticed rain falling where no command had ever been given.
Uh-oh.
It didn't take long for the news to reach the Jade Emperor.
The dragons had saved the people.
They had. Across the land, rivers were flowing again, fields were drinking in the rain, and hope had returned.
But heaven hadn't forgotten?
No, it wasn't long before news of the unexpected rain reached the Jade Emperor's palace.
How did he find out?
Heavenly officials looked down from the clouds and saw rain falling over the land, even though no command had been given.
So someone had acted without permission.
Exactly. The officials hurried into the great hall and bowed before the Jade Emperor.
What did they tell him?
Your Majesty, they said, rain has fallen across the land.
That sounds like good news.
At first, the Jade Emperor thought so too.
Then what changed?
The officials continued. The rain did not come by your command. The 4 dragons carried water from the sea and released it themselves.
They figured it out.
The great hall fell silent.
The dragons had disobeyed heaven.
They had. The Jade Emperor slowly rose from his throne. He understood why the dragons had acted, but he also believed that the laws of heaven had to be respected.
So he was caught between 2 ideas?
He was. If he ignored what had happened, others might believe they could ignore heaven's laws whenever they wished.
So what did he decide?
He called for the heavenly generals.
Uh-oh.
Powerful warriors stepped forward, wearing shining armor and carrying magical chains.
They weren't going to congratulate the dragons.
No. Bring the 4 dragons before me, the Jade Emperor commanded.
Did the dragons know they were coming?
Not yet. Far below, the 4 dragons were still watching the rain fall over the land, completely unaware that heaven's armies were already on their way.
The dragons had saved the people.
They had. Across the land, rivers were flowing again, fields were drinking in the rain, and hope had returned.
But heaven hadn't forgotten.
No. It wasn't long before news of the unexpected rain reached the Jade Emperor's palace. How did he find out? Heavenly officials looked down from the clouds and saw rain falling over the land, even though no command had been given.
So someone had acted without permission.
Exactly. The officials hurried into the great hall and bowed before the Jade Emperor.
What did they tell him?
Your Majesty, they said, rain has fallen across the land.
That sounds like good news.
At first, the Jade Emperor thought so too.
Then what changed?
The officials continued. The rain did not come by your command. The 4 dragons carried water from the sea and released it themselves.
They figured it out.
The great hall fell silent.
The dragons had disobeyed heaven.
They had. The Jade Emperor slowly rose from his throne. He understood why the dragons had acted, but he also believed that the laws of heaven had to be respected.
So he was caught between 2 ideas.
He was. If he ignored what had happened, others might believe they could ignore heaven's laws whenever they wished.
So what did he decide?
He called for the heavenly generals.
Uh-oh.
powerful warriors stepped forward, wearing shining armor and carrying magical chains.
They weren't going to congratulate the dragons.
No. Bring the 4 dragons before me, the Jade Emperor commanded.
Did the dragons know they were coming?
Not yet. Far below, the 4 dragons were still watching the rain fall over the land, completely unaware that heaven's armies were already on their way.
The heavenly generals were searching for the 4 dragons. They found them high above the land, where gentle rain was still falling across the fields below. Did the dragons try to escape? They could have. No one knew the skies better than the dragons, but they also knew the people below still needed them. So they stayed. They stayed. The heavenly generals surrounded the dragons and escorted them back to the Jade Emperor's palace. What did the Jade Emperor say? He looked at the 4 dragons for a long moment before speaking. You disobeyed the laws of heaven, he said. Do you deny it? What did Long Dragon say? We do not, Long Dragon replied. We knew the consequences, but we could not stand by while the people suffered. Did the other dragons agree? Every one of them. Yellow Dragon stepped forward. I wanted to trust that rain would come, he said, but hope alone could not fill the rivers. He finally admitted they had run out of time. He did. Pearl Dragon added, we could not ignore the children, the families, and the farmers below. They were willing to accept whatever happened next. Even Black Dragon lowered his head. If saving lives was wrong, he said, then I would make the same choice again. That took courage. The Jade Emperor knew the dragons had acted out of kindness, but he also believed that heaven's laws could not simply be ignored. So what was his judgment? He ordered that each dragon be placed beneath a great mountain, where they could never again fly across the skies. That sounds like the end of their story. According to the ancient legend, it wasn't. The dragon spirits were too powerful to stop helping the world. They flowed beneath the mountains, becoming 4 mighty rivers that carried fresh water across the land. So they were still keeping their promise. They were. The Yangtze River, the Yellow River, the Heilong River, and the Pearl River became lasting reminders of the dragon's gift. They couldn't soar through the clouds anymore, but they could still bring life wherever their waters flowed. I think that's my favorite ending so far. Mine too. It reminds us that true kindness sometimes asks us to make difficult choices, and that the greatest heroes are remembered not for the rewards they receive, but for the lives they change. Thanks for joining us on Tales from the Jade Scroll. We'll see you next time for another adventure from the legends of ancient China. Until then, keep wondering, and keep turning the pages of history.